Thanks, Joe, for inviting me to talk a little bit about vendor management and oversight. It's something that I'm very keenly interested in, and you'll understand why in a couple of moments when I kind of go through a little bit of an introduction about myself. But what I'm going to talk to you all about today really is some analogies about why managing vendors or subcontractors is really important in any type of business or sector, and provide some context around that. Talk about a framework that can help deliver more robust vendor management and oversight. And then I've got some statements and some questions where we can use them for the breakout rooms, so you can all have a discussion as well. So first of all, introducing myself. My name is Tom Lazenby, and I've been working in the clinical research sector for slightly more than a decade now, maybe more, maybe less than some of you all. My previous experience, I've been in clinical operations, data management, monitoring, and things like that. And then more recently, quality assurance, clinical quality at UCL, in the trials unit there, and at GSK as well for the last 18 months. More recently, I decided to take the leap of faith into business, and I launched a company called Mayet, and it's a software solution for vendor management and oversight in clinical trials. Hence why the topic is what the topic is for today. And that's kind of my what. Vendor management is the what. Creating more robust processes in vendor management to prevent things like delays or inefficiencies, and hopefully then also increase quality with the clinical trials that we all work really hard to deliver. And that's the why. So moving on to the next slide. In the chat today, I'm going to cover an interesting analogy between something that happened quite a while ago now, the construction of the Sydney Opera House, which had its own vendor management issues, which caused it to have a number of issues, and how that might compare to delivering a clinical trial, and what sort of similar issues you might encounter there. I'm going to introduce you to a framework called the Fire Triangle of Robust Vendor Management, which will hopefully be something new to you all. I like to think that I created it, but it's probably in someone else's brain at another time. And then I'll move on to the key questions so that we can all get into the discussion groups as well. So construction and research, what are the common things? Well, the most common thing is that to complete a construction project, you need to use a number of different specialities. You're going to have your concrete, all your different suppliers, all the different contractors, engineers working on those projects. Just like we have in research, we've got our software providers for data capture, but we've also got CRAs, project managers, number of different vendors and contractors that work to deliver a good clinical trial, hopefully. So the case study is, as I mentioned before, the Sydney Opera House. There it is in all its glory right now, but it wasn't as easy getting to that point as I think if you've ever worked in construction. I know a lot of people work in different careers before they get to clinical trials, but you might know that there's a number of problems that can happen during a construction project. And notwithstanding here with the Sydney Opera House, they had a number of issues. So these are the four key ones that I've listed here. So an underestimation of the budget, which we all know. And just to precurse this part of the talk, as I kind of go through these issues and then talk about the effects as well, which is next, try to consider these issues in the context of the clinical trials that you work on, because that'll be kind of, where the analogy really builds in your head. So an underestimation of budget, not aligning budget requirements with how much the work is, how long it's going to take, and complexity as well. The architect themselves made a number of design changes during the time of the construction. I think all of you will probably be able to make a comparison there. The complex design of the sails, which presented significant construction challenges because it was very novel for the time. This was back in the 1950s. And so being able to deliver that complex construction was a setback for the team that was trying to deliver the project. And finally, conflicts between different entities arose due to misaligned expectations and deliverables. So setting out what the requirements were at the beginning between different parties was not done correctly or in a more robust case or fashion. And this led to conflicts around these kind of contracts and the requirements that were in those contracts. So that's the four kind of key areas where there were failings within the Sydney Opera House project. And now I'm going to just kind of go over what the effects of those issues were. So, like with anything, I think we can kind of bring any failings on any kind of project down to three key factors, or four most likely, which is money, time, quality, and a lot of shouting at each other, hence the horn at the bottom. And so the Sydney Opera House, the effects of the issues that they had to overcome were that there was significant overrun of the budget, as you can see there, more than 40 times. Oh no, not more than 40 times. I'll leave the maths to someone else. I think it's 25. The project took 14 years instead of 4, so it overran by a decade. I think HS2 might push that for a record the way we're going. New construction methods had to be devised, so someone had to come up with a new way of doing something during the course of the project, which I assume was down to a quality issue of some sort. So they had to completely change the method in which the construction was going to take place. And the halts in construction eventually led to the resignation of the lead architect. So the issues that were felt by all of the parties in process actually led to the resignation of the kind of lead architect, Jorn, who was Jorn Utzon, who was in the previous slide there. It says resignation, but in the description of the story that I read, it sounded very much as well like he was potentially pushed to a degree. So, you know, you have these relationship issues, which are also caused by dealing with a number of different entities when you're trying to deliver a project. So, as I said, a lot of these things come down to time, money, quality, and relationships. And so if we move on to the next stage, we can kind of see what the potential causes of issues with vendor management in clinical trials are, and how those compare to construction. So in a clinical trial, underestimation of costs might come down to things like how much it costs to conduct patient recruitment and what the length of that recruitment period needs to be. So how much are you spending on the time to recruit? Complexity of testing and data analysis might be under-resourced as well. Changing protocols or endpoints mid-study. We're all aware of substantial amendments. Some of them are more substantial than others, but if we're talking about changing objectives in the middle of a study, then we know that that's going to incur a significant amount of cost and time delay. Failures with equipment or technology, such as software or data collection. If you've ever taken part in a trial with a complex design where a specific type of test is supposed to be being conducted, or a specific type of analysis is supposed to be being conducted, if that's not robustly controlled or validated in the beginning, hopefully you've never encountered this, but if you have, you will have seen that there will be significant quality issues in the end result, and the data, which is, you know, the data is our key our key outcome of delivering a clinical trial, as you're all aware. And finally, conflicts with vendors. And this could be providing materials or delivering aspects of the study. But essentially, what we don't want to have is persistent conflicts with our vendors. We want to have collaborative partnerships, and we want to know that we can trust the people that we're working with. And likewise, I'm talking from the outsourcing relationship here myself, actually. I don't know why I'm doing that. But essentially, you want a good relationship between your vendors and your sponsors, or your organization carrying out the research. And poor relationships lead to poor outcomes. So in terms of these issues or causes, what can we see as the effects of what might happen with our studies? So financial control, we could compromise the study's integrity if there's not enough funds left to properly conduct the study, or if you have to then try and add money when it's not within budget. This can obviously be a significant issue for the entity who's conducting the research. Time delays and potential quality issues. These lead to contractual amendments and can also lead to financial costs, but time delays are also an opportunity cost. If you're trying to get a drug to market, if you're delayed by 6 months to a year on each stage of your study, you've lost potentially 2 to 3 years of having your product on the market. And so there's opportunity costs there. Data quality and rework and the corrective and preventative actions that are required to do this. All time and cost financially with people working on those aspects. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, with the relationship management, one of these impacts is the eroding confidence between parties. And as I mentioned, a truly collaborative partnership is the only way to deliver on time and quality outcomes. So vendor management and robust vendor management, no less, is a really, for me, a critical aspect to delivering a clinical trial. And so with all of that being said, I'd just like to introduce this kind of framework of the fire triangle of vendor management. I suppose no one on this call probably expected to get a lesson in fire safety at the beginning, in the middle of this session, but I'll try and go past that as quickly as possible. You're probably all aware from high school chemistry how a fire works. So you need these three elements in order to produce and sustain a fire. We need oxygen, heat, and fuel. But what aspects do we need to ensure that robust vendor management can be in place for a clinical trial? So in the fire triangle of vendor management, we have communication, data, and processes. So for communication, we need to ensure that there's continuous and proper process in place, as is for the other corner of the triangle, for robust communication ongoing throughout the clinical trial. For processes, there needs to be a number of different processes going on with vendor management throughout the study. So you should have good selection and qualification processes, robust risk management, communication processes, as I alluded to, processes for measuring performance, such as KPIs or other metrics for quality, and then a process also for closing down and collecting the information back from your vendors as well. So kind of like a close down or wrapping up process. And finally, data. So without data, we wouldn't be able to make decisions about communication or our processes. So with data, we can make sure that it's always all of our decisions throughout the clinical trial are informed, and we know with a little bit of empirical knowledge that we're making the right decision for the clinical trial at any given stage. So what the fire triangle of vendor management gives us is, through communication, we build partnership with the vendor. And likewise, if you're working for the vendor, I don't know what everyone's background is here, so I'm talking more from the sponsor or the study conduct perspective. But if you're working in the vendor, obviously you want to have good communication with the trial sponsor. With processes, we can ensure accountability because everyone should be aware of their role and responsibility with regard to how the study is being conducted and what vendor management actually means for your organization. And again, with data, the purpose of this and the outcome that we get from this is analytically derived decision making. So again, we're not making decisions without being properly informed first. And so what are the impacts of not completing the fire triangle? So I've done this on two levels, and there's one that encompasses everything. So for the clinical study itself, or the clinical trial itself, we have delays and missed milestones. We have variability in quality of delivery and compliance issues as well. So such as under regulatory inspection conditions, if you're not conducting robust vendor management, you could have issues with the study, but you could also incur some inspection findings of your own for not having control of your suppliers. On the organizational level, we have increased cost for delivering the study or the trial, lost revenue because of delay to market, and again, regulatory scrutiny for not providing that robust level of vendor management. And as I said, the all-encompassing one, which covers both of these, is relation damage and personal stress or fatigue of those involved in the vendor relationship as well. So to avoid all of these, we should try and use those three things to deliver more robust vendor management. And so if we do this, hopefully, then we have some benefits. And the benefits of that, apologies for the very wordy slide there. We have enhanced decision making, better risk mitigation, so identification and early mitigation of vendor related risks. So identifying the critical aspects of your studies that your vendors are performing and ensuring that any gaps that are identified are mitigated in the early stages. Cost efficiency, so ensuring that you apply your data-driven approach for future planning as well as previous work. So if you've done a study with previous group of vendors and you weren't happy with the quality or the delivery or the timeliness, then you use any previous data, if you're using a data-driven model, to build in some additional controls, or just alternatively seek different vendors that you think might be able to do a better job next time around. And finally, improve vendor accountability. So ongoing monitoring of vendor performance, using data such as for your key performance indicators, helping to ensure that deviations are identified and addressed more quickly. And working more collaboratively with the idea of enhanced communication will help you to ensure that your vendor is working for you the way that you want them to, and not losing that level of control that you feel like you might need when delivering the study.